One of the main ways that I regulate my spending in this hobby is by only keeping to certain lines, and only buying characters that I at least am aware of. Or at least I try to. Something looks cool, then it looks cool. And when Legacy United Beast Wars Universe Tigerhawk released this time last year, I did not even give it a second thought. I had no idea who this guy is. Like, at the time I had not watched a single episode of Beast Wars, and since then, yes, I have watched most of Season 1, but I haven't even made it to Transmetals, let alone this guy. Like, yes, I have a brief summary of who his character is supposed to be from Kian. It's just two characters mashed together. If I'm wrong, correct me down below. And while he looked pretty cool and felt pretty nice, I didn't feel the need to buy one. So it's a good thing my boy gave me one for Christmas. Subscribe to Kian MacLeod. But yeah, now that I have my own thrust upon me, let's talk about him. The sculpted detail and proportions on this figure are really nice. This is one of those figures where there's just so much detail on all of the surfaces. Every single panel you're looking at, it's either fur detail or loads of technobabble, and you know what? I'm here for it. However, there are some parts of him that look a little bit busy. The shins look pretty great, apart from the tiny feet. Those do bother me a little bit, but they're like that for the transformation. I do like this piston detail here. Thighs and hips are really rounded, and there's a lot of detail poking out there. This feathery loincloth thing has a lot of nice sculpting on it. The torso looks like the surface of the Death Star. There's just so many little squares and panels. It's all asymmetrical as well, I really like it. And then that middle purple section just ties it together nicely with a little bit more intentional looking detail. And those paws coming over the collar, they look really nice too. The arms have some beautiful asymmetry on the go. Both the forearms keep the same sort of shell, but they have slightly different detailing. One looks a little bit more organic, the other is a bit more pistony. But then that's counteracted with the very different shoulder pauldrons, the right being a lot more techy, and the left being a straight up tiger head. I dig it. And speaking of heads, this sculpt is really, really nice. It seems a little bit small to me, especially considering how wide the shoulder line is. But there's a lot of nice detail on the helmet, again with the asymmetry, one side being a little bit more organic than the other. The gritted teeth look is fantastic, and I love that visor. There is just one major problem that I have with the sculpt of this guy. From the back, the wings look absolutely fantastic. There's loads of nice detail on the feathers, the pivoting points, there's kind of vented detail. They sit at whichever angle you fancy. It looks really nice, but only from behind, because the front view is unfortunately very, very hollow. Both the body of the wings and the struts that they connect on are just filled with little gaps and structural points. There's not much sculpting on the inside to help hide that, and it just ends up looking really, really ugly, unfortunately. Granted, the dark purple plastic does help hide that a little bit, but it's not something that I can easily forgive. This is definitely the weakest part of the robot mode, especially since the rest of this mode is mostly pretty good, particularly in these colors, because this palette is absolutely gorgeous. The stark white and deep purple are a great combination on their own, but you throw in that kind of tan brown, and it just brings it up that much more. It gives the character a bit of a cobbled together look, but in a good way, and those accents in transparent green pop so much. I do find that the color placement is maybe a little bit sporadic, but I do believe it's pretty accurate to the design from the show, so can't really complain about that too much. Just file that one away under my disdain for Transmetal designs. However, one thing I will complain about a little is this guy doesn't really feel like he has much paint. He does have a decent amount, the silver on the wings, some of the gold on the paws, a few of the pops are white that are pretty nicely color matched. And the details on the tiger's head, they're all painted, but like, that's it. I would have liked it if maybe they'd used some of the paint budget to give the purple a nice metallic sheen. I know that it looks pretty shiny on camera, but it ain't quite that nice in person. But if you feel that way like I do, you can always paint it yourself. Because all in all, this is a really good looking figure still. It's not perfect, those wings still bother me, the paint still bugs me a little bit, but that's all I can really complain about with this guy. At least in the robot mode appearance. Now, accessory wise, this figure comes pretty well equipped. You get this double barrel blaster, it's pretty nice and it has some good sculpting on it, but I do just stick it on the arm and leave it there. Just becomes an ambient part of the design. You get these feathered saws that match the sculpting on the rest of the wings. They look nice in his hands and you can get some really cool poses with him holding them. But their best function is to fill out the gaps in the wings where they're supposed to store. And the final accessory you get with this guy is these kind of ugly, very hollowed out blasters. I'm not a massive fan of these things. They just kind of stop awkwardly towards the end. You can put them in his hands if you want to, but the main objective of these things is to plug into these parts of the wings so they can be the flip out cannons. And they do work as those pretty well. But I can't help but find myself a little bit uninspired by the choices of accessory here. They work for the figure I suppose, but they're just not overly exciting. And that does go hand in hand with the posing. The head is on a pretty good ball joint with a lot of wiggle room. The wings can rotate pretty freely and have two ratcheted hinge joints. The shoulder pauldrons open up to allow the arms to rotate out, although they'd much rather untab from the transformation joints and move there. And if you move the wings out of the way, they can go all the way around. There's bicep swivels, pretty deep elbow bends, nothing at the wrists. There's a waist swivel under the crotch flap, which is pretty awkward. The hips move out standardly, but there's a little ratchet to begin with that kind of compromises ace stances. But the forward and backwards are on ratchet joints that go really far. He has thigh swivels, standard knees, and pretty good ankle pivots. The posing on this guy is a bit of a mixed bag. He has most of everything you want, but some of the joints are just a little bit too awkward. If you use the waist swivel too far, it looks dumb. If you don't use the hips far enough, it looks dumb. There's not enough detents in the ratchets to the wings, so you kind of fixed on what poses you can have him in. And the shoulders are just a bit of a faff to handle. He's not a figure that I like picking up and playing with quite as much as I do just displaying. And to a capacity that persists in the transformation. Don't get me wrong, this is actually a pretty fun conversion. There's some interesting ways that things work. Things like getting the chest tab together are fun, but the main issues are just with the clearance. There doesn't feel like there's quite enough to do everything that it wants of you. There's definitely a knack to the order of operations so it doesn't get too cluttered, but once you do get the hang of that, it does come together pretty smoothly. And once you get all the legs lined up, you're left with a bullshit cat mode. Now I get that this is supposed to be a Tigerhawk, but what the f***? This is a dumb mode, and I kinda love it, but like, not in a good way, kind of ironically, because I don't think it's very good. Like, the look of it in some poses is pretty nice. The wingspan is impressive, and I really like the tiger head sculpt, but that's as far as I can praise it. It's really gappy in some places. There are some parts that just don't tab in like one of the robot mode arms, and it doesn't feel like the most solid thing in the world. Like, you just don't have a good place where you can grip this thing by. I don't think it's a far-fetched thing to say that one of the most important things with a toy is the ability to hold it comfortably, and you don't really have that here. You have sharp edges or overly bulbous parts like the chest, and just nothing feels very satisfying. And that's before you actually get to the features of this mode. The wings are exactly the same as the robot mode. The front hips are exactly the same as the robot mode, and you get a lot of the same articulation in the front legs as you did back there, just with maybe a little bit more range at the elbow, knee, things. Tell me what this is called, please. And then you get this kind of horribly angled paw pivot that doesn't really work all that well. And then as for new articulation, the beast mode head can look up and down, the mouth can open really wide, and then the back legs, you get a ball joint at the hip, a hinge joint, hinge joint, hinge joint. Done. There's just not a whole lot to this mode at all. And the way that the poseability is and the way these back legs are kind of spindly, you don't get a whole lot of range in the posing either. And in all honesty, the disappointing vehicle mode and the lackluster robot mode features kind of dissuade me from wanting to recommend this. Like, don't take my overly critical ramblings wrong. This is actually a pretty good figure. I like it quite a lot, but looking at it through my own criteria of what makes a figure good, I wouldn't say that this is worth full price. Now fortunately, most places that are still carrying this thing have it for about deluxe price at the moment, which, if you can get it for that, go for it. It's worth it. But if you're having to dole out full retail price for this thing, I'm not 100% sure that it qualifies. I don't know, maybe go down below and leave a comment, tell me what you think of this figure. Is it worth the full leader price that it retails for? If you agree with me that it's a good figure but it doesn't justify that price, then leave a like. And subscribe to see what's yet to come. Right now, I am not 100% sure what that is. I can't really give you a teaser without my pre-orders coming in, but there's definitely going to be something, so stay tuned. But as of right now, democracy needs me. I'm going to go shoot some squids. Ciao.
Hi, Louis.